17th chapter, the 22nd through the 26th verse. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. He said, "If you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you."
Praise God. Thank you, Evangelist Jones. As I was in the deep meditation of the Lord, I began to ask the question and say, God, this is one of the signs that you gave to Moses to turn the water into sweet water. But I said, God, it's got to be more to this than just the healing. Somebody would turn over and they would find in their John, the 4th chapter, and the 24th verse. Evangelist Jones, we're going to have her to narrate it as we go forward. We're dealing with what God is a spirit. We're dealing with the spirit. Water is a sign of the spirit. You can be seated because you're going to be on your feet in a few minutes. Come on up. Getting ready to release. See, what God wants to release is a shifting in the atmosphere. That's why all those weeks the enemy fought to try to keep this from being released and the seal being broken. But God is getting ready to do something. When we break these last 2 waters, there's a seal that's being broke in the spirit realm. Go ahead.
John, the 4th chapter, and the 24th verse. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth.
God is a spirit, and the worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. Then God took me to another. It's in Exodus, the 20, the 1st through the 5th. These are the commandments that God has given to us. They that worship him, keep it in your mind, must worship him in spirit and in truth. We get ready to break the seal on something right about now. And it pertains more than just your miracle after miracle of healing. This is something that's going to bring out the atmosphere, that supernatural God. He was just waiting on a vessel to speak it. And he was waiting on a time for it to be spoken. And this is the time. Exodus 20 through the 1st and the 5th verse.
And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me.
Then let's go back over here. And I would ask someone to bring me that picture. Let's go over to Revelation 1 and 14 and 15. Because these are the questions that I asked God. And this is what God said. We are violated in the church what God has said for us not to do. We have violated it. Go ahead. You have Evangelist John.
Revelation 1 and 14. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire.
And so I asked God, I said, well, Revelation depicts God, how he's supposed to look. And the Lord said, I said, no image. No graven image. I said, but this is close to what you said. He said, I said, no image. For I am a jealous God. And then he added to what would happen as he gave the instruction to Moses. He said, all these things will fall on the generation. And I began to say, are we Aaron? Because we have pictures that depict Jesus. And he said, no image. Because when we make it an image, we begin to relate to it. We begin to say, that's God. How many people in America and all over today said, that image is God. That image represents Jesus. Are we breaking the commandments? So he told us that he said, don't have any images. But they that worship him in spirit and in truth. The only way we're going to conceive power is that we get away from the image.
Come on.
Jesus.
I stood there and I listened to what the Spirit was saying. He said, I don't want to have any image. We see people walking around with the cross. And I said, suppose he had went to the guillotine. Would we be walking around with a guillotine on our neck? He said, have no image. Worship him in spirit. And in the spirit realm is the only place we're going to get our power source. Because every time we begin to see an image or portrayal of God, we break down the spirit. We make him mere mortal man. And Jesus was beyond just mere mortal man. He might have taken on the flesh of man, but he was beyond the image of man. That's why he said, leave it for me to go away for the comforter. He wanted the spirit to come, that the spirit would be in us, that we would recognize truth. This image does not recognize truth. Although we know that he was born by a woman, but what he told us in the commandments that we're supposed to keep. We're supposed to keep. Now I want to say one thing to you. Then we're going to move on. But before we move on, I want you to get this in your spirit. We have violated what God told us not to do. Who put us in that position to weaken our power? Jesus. Our power has been weakened because we see the image in our home, we see the image everywhere we go, and we say, that's Jesus. But he said, don't have any graven images. We don't even supposed to be trying to depict how the angels look. Because the angels have not a mortal body, but they take on their body once they appear. They are spirit. And when God says, worship me in spirit and truth, that's what he wants you to do. And as long as you can, in your mind, you continue to picture this image of what Jesus is supposed to look like and what God's supposed to look like, it takes away the spirit power. Because he said, this warfare is not one of flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual warfare. And the devil want to print an image on in your mind of how God's supposed to look. And as long as you're looking at that image, you can't worship him in spirit and truth. Because when the image fails you, the first thing you're going to say, I don't want to serve that God. Because you're not looking at him in spirit. You're looking at him as flesh, what he represents. Now is the time that God is pouring out his spirit. And the scripture said, those that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. So if anything that is blocking you from getting into the spirit, you need to begin to move it. And if that image is beginning to block you from beginning to be How many of y'all got the Constitution? I carry my Constitution. They will fight over this because there's certain rules in here that they don't want changed. And Revelation. Come on, we're going to finish this out. I'm going to leave a seal on you today that you will walk in the power of the Spirit. You're going to walk in the supernatural because now is our time. Revelation 22 and 18. Now is our time. We got to deal with this. We have to reckon with this. Somebody going to have to deal with this. Somebody will put an image out there. And when the scripture said, don't do it. And if you add anything to the Constitution, you got to go before a committee of people before you change the United States Constitution. Did anyone go before God and petition him and say, I want to have a picture of you? Jesus wouldn't even stay still long enough for them to even put one on the rocks. Because he was constantly moving. Because he knew if they made a picture of him, they would bow down and begin to worship the picture. And that's why he said, those that worship me must worship me in spirit and in truth. Do I hear somebody out there? Come on.
Revelation 22 and 18. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds anything to them, God will add to him the plagues described in this book.
If you add anything, something to add, y'all. Bishop has something to add.
Yes, sir.
Or take away from this book. Something taken away from this book. You tell me that God performed the first marriage in Genesis, it was between man and woman, and now you're coming back telling me that you have moral rights to have man plus man and woman plus woman, and homosexual acts is right, and I want the Constitution to amend itself and put a law in there for me. The devil is a liar. The kingdom is the kingdom, and the word of God stands forevermore. This is the fall of Babylon. God began to show me. He said, look, you got the Catholicism from the Catholic Church. You have America, which is one of the superpowers. And you watch how and what I'm going to do. All of a sudden I begin to see God. Now this is what's getting ready to happen. All of a sudden I begin to see God saying, I'll affect the economy. And the economy and change began to crumble. Then he said, I will allow immorality begin to be stronger in the land. And it began to happen. Then the next thing God reminded me was this. Let's go over here to Genesis 6, 5, and 7. And we got one more, and then we're going to see what God's going to do. But God getting ready. He said, when you release this, see, God is waiting. He just like he did when he came down and he said, when he began to bargain, he said, if you can find just one in this city, just one, he said, I'll spare it. God said that when you were electing a president, you didn't want President Obama. But God touched the economy. And you had no choice because your benefits